Anderson Cooper is exploring his own family history and shining a light on one of America's most storied families, the Vanderbilts. He writes, the United States, a country founded on anti-royalist principles, would, only 20 years after its revolutionary burst into existence, produce the progenitor of a family that would come to hold itself up as American royalty, with the titles and palaces to prove it. But their empire would last for less than 100 years before collapsing under its own weight, destroying itself with its own pathology. Joining us now is the anchor of Anderson Cooper 360 and the author of the new book, Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty, Anderson Cooper. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
So the guy you were talking about there, the progenitor, is Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Right, my great-great-great-grandfather.
I like to call him the Commodore.
The Commodore, yes. That's what he was known. He liked to be called the Commodore as well, I think.
How aware were you of all of this growing up?
I'm not aware really at all. My mom actually, was Gloria Vanderbilt, but she had a very fractured relationship with the family she was born into. She didn't know her father. He died of alcoholism when she was 15 months old. And she never really connected to any of them. So she never told me stories about her childhood growing up. She never really spoke about it. And, I think if she was allowed to read this book, she would find it as fascinating as I found it, because she really didn't know the details about all these people who she was so connected to.
She would have learned something, and you certainly learned a lot reading.
Oh, I totally. I really knew nothing about. I was a big fan of the Crown series. This is like The Crown on steroids with a whole bunch of Americans. It's it's a multi-generational story. They're larger than life characters. Some are irredeemable and awful. Some have extraordinary accomplishments. But for me in writing this with the author Catherine Howe, we wanted to kind of not look at the Commodore as a businessman and all his business ventures. Books have been written about that, but as who these people were as human beings in the glare of spotlight, in the glare of celebrity, in the glare of all this wealth, and how the pathological obsession with money that the Commodore had infected subsequent generations.
Well, first of all, more dysfunctional than the Crown is almost physiologically impossible.
Well,
but it's interesting.
Come close, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So pathological obsession with money. What went wrong? Because you really do focus on the fall.
Yeah, look, the Commodore had what he called a mania for money. He didn't care about anything else. He didn't care about the daughters he had because they wouldn't inherit the Vanderbilt name. He really didn't care about his sons until one of them tricked him in business, and then he suddenly thought, oh, this guy may have something. I'm going to give him all the money. He gave him $100 million when he died in 1877, which was more money than anyone had ever seen before. It was more money than was in the U.S. Treasury. But the subsequent generations basically just went on this spending spree to break into society, to build these enormous palaces, all of which were built and torn down within a span of about 60 years.
What lesson do you get from that now as you're writing this? And I wonder if there was a lesson for you in it growing up through osmosis or otherwise.
The reason I didn't know anything about the Vanderbilts, I could have read history books about them as a kid. I wanted nothing to do with them. I looked as a little kid at my dad's side of the family, which was Mississippi, a farm during the Depression, and what little I knew about my mom's sort of tortured background. And as a little kid, I was like, I'm sticking with the Coopers. No good can come of imagining a life of living in palaces and connected to the Vanderbilts. It just didn't seem like a recipe for a good life or a happy life. And also, my parents told me early on, people are going to think you have all this, that there's all this money waiting for you. There isn't. We're doing well. Your college will be paid for, but you got to make your own way, which I was happy to know. I'm glad they did that because, a lot of the Vanderbilts said it sucked the money they got. It sucked the initiative they might have had, and kind of led to this life of isolation and sadness in many ways.
To be clear, you're doing okay. You're making your own way.
I'm very, yeah. But I was glad early on to know that is what, like everybody else, I have to make my way, that there wasn't some pot of gold. I do think it's not a good thing.
Because you work incredibly hard. I've always been struck by how hard you work. Not only do you do your show, but then you have 60 Minutes. You do all these things. And I always wondered whether you were driven to do it, maybe because you saw how easily it can be squandered.
100%. I knew my mom, who even made money on her own. She spent a lot of money, and as a little kid, I knew this ship is sort of sinking, and I gotta I wanted stability. I wanted like a stable foundation.
I think I'm getting a hard rap here. Was that what you just said in my ear? Because I have a million more questions. Okay, there was a hard rap.
Okay.
We'll take this offline.
Okay.
Listen, and I know you wrote this largely for your son Wyatt. He will get so much out of this,
Yeah,
as I'm sure he learns so much from you every day. Thank you so much.
my pleasure.